Hi there, I'm Justin Brogan here again to give you another video. Me and my wife are co-founding the Five Loaves Two Fish permaculture ministry farm here in North Carolina. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to do a really good worm farm that costs just hardly any money. So I was able to find this barrel, a few barrels for about $20. And this is a great way to get started on it. A 55-gallon drum. I got 3 of them, so in all that's going to be probably about a little less than 150 because you got some space here that's not being used. But I'll just, if you want to come closer, I started cutting out this area right here, and this is so that I can get into it. I have a little bit left to cut. I just wanted to show you guys how I cut it before actually putting it together. I put it on a slight hill so that it will drain. So if you look on this side, we have 2 of these holes. This one has a hole in it, but yeah, I'm going to put a nozzle in this so that I can open it up, and when I water the worms after a long time, once they have a lot of castings in there and the dirt is transformed into casting, it's going to settle to the bottom, and over time I'll be able to open up this nozzle and collect the juice out of there. The juice is a really concentrated, well-balanced food that's readily available for the plants to eat instantaneously. I like to usually mix it in to about a 10%, so 1 part juice and 1 part water, but you can also do 1 to 100. So if you have a gallon, do 1 gallon to 100 gallons of water. That's perfectly fine. Just depends. Like it's pretty expensive to buy it. So, but if you're making it your own and you're not trying to sell it, then it won't burn your plants. You can use as much as you want. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how I cut the barrel, because I think that's an important part of it. I use just an angle grinder. I like the thinnest blade that you can get, only a couple bucks. And you want to come from this side so you can see. Stay back so you don't get any particles. So I cut around this, and I'll just show you how fast it is. So as you can see, it goes quite fast. Honestly, that's the only way I would recommend, only tool that I would recommend to do this. So I did clean this barrel. I rinsed it out pretty good. It's better to find a barrel that's not wasn't extremely hazardous. The only thing that was in here from the factory was windshield wiper cleaner, so that's not extremely toxic, but I did give it a good rinse out and should be fine. He did rinse it out before, and it had, when I got it, it just had a little rainwater. There's no smell to it at all, and so this will be definitely be good. So the first step to consider, there's a little water in there, it's not a big deal, is you're gonna want to put some rock in there. And I suggest putting a good few inches, at least until it covers the hole that you're getting your juice out of. That way it doesn't, you're not getting the valve clogged up. So I'll just put this kind of towards the hole. Oh no, I think this is going to be plenty. Covered, I'll just kind of put it in. Now this is a pretty slight angle. If I wanted to, I could kind of scoot in these blocks that they're on a little bit more, and that'll raise it up. And the blocks are to keep it from, also from moving back and forth. They keep them in place really well. So that's a pretty decent angle right there. I like that angle a little better than what I had it before. I just threw it up there. And that should get it to where most of the liquid would only settle about this far. There's a little bit of a lip there, which, you know, you could put something there in order to block it, I suppose, and put maybe, I don't know, something that's waterproof, that, you know, but I'm not going to worry about it. I know that I'll get most of the juice once it's getting juice. You're not going to start getting juice until probably, honestly, it could take up to a year to really get it to where it's, the first batch is ready. Because the first thing is I only have this right here. I collected worms on the property in some material. This material was some old grass clippings that had basically decomposed over time, and it's full of worm castings, but it's still probably still has a few worms in it. We'll be adding this. It's got that guy in it. I don't want him in there. Probably doesn't have much. I went through it pretty good. Here's a worm though, but this already has a good amount of worm casting, so I'll just mix this in. I also have this, which is mostly horse manure, which will also go in there to feed it. And then I also have this, which is just obviously what the local dirt looks like when you take it out of the ground. It does have some chunks of grass in it. This is some dirt that came out of some post holes that I dug to build a fence. So I just collected it. All this stuff, I suggest putting it kind of in the middle of it more so that it decays. It won't grow. It might try to grow for a little bit, but you're gonna have this covered all the time, so it's only gonna do so much. That's probably enough rock if you just want to show in there. So you want to just get a good layer. You can see on this side how the hole is completely covered, so that the water can rest in there eventually and not get sopped up by the material. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to shovel in a little bit of manure on the bottom, put a little layer down there. The worms will eat this. So this is to try to persuade the worms, once there's a lot of worms in there, to go on down and breed and eat near the bottom of the hole. Now this also has other stuff in it other than just manure, so it's got, and worms prefer decomposing matter. So usually they will eat stuff, you know, you put green stuff in there, and once it starts to kind of go off and start to wither and break down, that's when they start going at it. From my experience. So I'll put a little layer of that on there. I'll start putting some of this red dirt in there. So they'll have to go through the red dirt in order to get to the compost. I'll try to get those, you know, clots of grass and root in there too. They'll also go through and eat that, which will persuade them even more to go through the red dirt and change this into worm castings. Let's put a bit of a layer of this in there. And then I'm going to go over here and put some of this. I'm going to mix it in a little bit. Red dirt. And then one more thing. So here I put some grass clippings under our rabbit cage, and they've been pooping on it. So it's got a lot of rabbit manure in there. I'm just gonna kind of throw this in there, make a layer, so help kind of get it a little more aerated down there. So put a good layer of that. Go back to get some manure on it. Now you're just kind of tossing a little bit of everything in there for them. It's not really, you know, crazy important to do any of this a very certain way. Just giving them a lot of food, giving them the air. So it's definitely good to put some kind of like dry or drying matter, even green matter would be fine. In the middle of it, it's just more food and a bit of air. I'll just like it a bit better. So I'll be definitely putting one more layer of that in it. It's just making a little worm heaven. I'm just kind of putting random things in here. And then once you're completely done, you're going to want to water it down a bit as well. There's not going to be any more rocks that I put in there. You only need the rocks on the bottom. You could put smaller rocks and then sand on it if you want to kind of help to separate things a little better, but that's not what I do. Just more work and more materials. But it'd probably be a little better. You can even put some leaves. I got some leaves right here that have been decaying for a while and are hard to get. We'll go. Come with me. This will eventually be another like little worm habitat that gets created in here. I'm not really seeing any right now. Yeah, I am actually a little bit. So this next year or so, or maybe even this year, there's actually is quite a bit of them. I'll be able to come through and collect worms. There's some more. I just dug down just a little bit. Also these beetles, but definitely a lot of worms in here already. And I just piled this up a couple weeks ago, and it's already attracting worms, so it's a good way to attract them. And I'm just going to take a little handful of this, these leaves, and toss them in there. Little leaves and sticks, just a little bit. I'll let the worms continue to do their thing here. It's also a nice little ant colony here. Yeah, that's it. If you don't want to have to buy worms, you can just do a leaf pile like that. Let it sit. It might take, a couple months to really get enough worms to really kickstart a worm farm. If you do want to buy worms, you could look us up on Facebook. Eventually, probably within the next couple months of this video, we'll be able to send people worms online. So that could be an option as well. So this is just another bit of food. Another thing you can do is you can put your kitchen scraps in there. And the way which I will be doing that for sure, because especially when they're rotten, you can put a little bit of, the only thing you don't want to put in there is citrus. You can put citrus pills in there, but it's like the last, very, very, very last thing that they're going to go for. They will eat it though. It's just it'll take quite a while before they feel like they're desperate enough to go ahead and go for it. And the key thing with feeding is what you're going to want to do. Oh, there's a good amount of worms in there still. What you're going to want to do is when you first feed feed on this side, and then I like to cover it with something, which I'll would like to get like a little carpet or something to put over this. So you feed them, put all your scraps right here, put it on there, and then that's going to attract a lot of the worms over to that area, and they're going to go through, and a lot of them are going to eat that for a while. So in about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how many worms you have and how much food you give them and how long it takes, once you look there and all the food is gone, every bit of it, then, and if you don't feed them for a couple of days or whatever, there's enough food in here for them to survive for a very long time without me feeding them. But they will go for like the yummy stuff that you give them, like rotten fruit, rotten vegetables, you know, stuff like this. They love it. They're attracted to it. It ferments. It's nice and nasty, and they love that. They love the nasty stuff. Even cooked grains is okay. I don't put cooked meat in there, but I would put raw meat. But usually my raw meat will go in my compost pile. But you can put raw meat in there. They will eat it, and it would be okay for them. But cooked grains are perfectly fine to put in there also. So, you know, pretty much anything you would put in the chicken coop, you can also put in the worm farm, and they will eat it. But then after they eat all that, then you put your next on the other side. And what they're going to do is while they're here eating, they're going to be mating with each other, laying eggs. Some of them will still be pregnant and, you know, laying in the process of finishing laying. But when you put that in there, they'll all start to move over here. And while they do that, they'll be laying all their eggs throughout the compost or the worm farm. And then they'll come over here and they'll do the thing. It'll be party time. They'll all be together, you know, having a good time and loving life. And that means they're breeding, and then they'll move through and do it again. Here's a baby worm right here. It's very small. So then you'll start getting a lot of that throughout your compost, which is probably a lot of those in here already because they've been living in this like crazy. But these little guys will stick around here and start eating, you know, the matter that's here for them to already start eating. And when they're big enough, they'll start doing the same thing. They'll start being able to travel through laying their eggs. And it should only take about 3 to 6 weeks max before you go from a couple hundred to about 10,000. And then they just keep on multiplying week by week. You know, they only takes them probably about a week to get from that size to like, you know, an inch or two long, to where they're actually doing a lot of work. But you know, when you have 10,000 of those in there, after a week you got 10,000 good sized worms. After 2 weeks you got, you know, those same 10,000 worms are now mating and creating more worms. And then within a few months you'll have probably close to 1 million worms in here. So that's why in, you know, 2 to 3 months we'll be able to go ahead and start selling worms, and I'll be able to collect some of these worms, make another worm farm, and then make another worm farm, and eventually I'll probably do about 10 of these or so. And you know, by next year maybe all of these will be ready to start harvesting. I'm thinking by next spring, which it's spring now, I'll be able to harvest all this, use it for planting and regenerating the property. You know, it's just a vat of fertility, and then you just put this in with compost, with this, mix it in with some of the local soil, and then you're having like every time you plant a plant or a tree, you're putting in little seed, I call them seeds of fertility. You know, maybe a 3 by 3 area for a tree. You know, that's going to that's going to start spreading out as the roots grow through it, especially once the roots leave that area. The biology is going to follow, and the biology is going to start spreading as those roots spread throughout the whole area. And then also you're mulching that area. That mulch becomes decays and also becomes fertility for the topsoil, and it'll, you know, regeneration starts happening fast. Within 3 years, this place is going to be a completely different soil. It's going to be hard to find this very red soil at that point. It's all going to start taking on a look that'll probably look more like what you're seeing here, which is what you want. You want, you know, if you did put a shovel in anywhere on your property and you're digging up this stuff, then you're doing it right. If you're still digging up, you know, after 2-3 years, if you're still digging up the red, then yeah, you want to kind of work on it a little bit more. Here, I'm going to add last little bit of the, this is just a very diverse, these are grass clippings, but I don't really have grass. It's just a bunch of, a bunch of plants. I'm just going to kind of mix all this stuff together up here on top. I got a little bit of rocks in there somehow, and with the grass. I'm going to mix the grass up in here on the top. That's very aerated. When I water it, it's going to hold a lot of water, and the worms are really just going to love that. A few rocks in there is okay too. For the last bit, I'm just going to throw some more of this in there. This already has tons of worm castings in it because they've been eating through this stuff. You can kind of see it, the difference when it's got this kind of this is almost all worm castings. This is once grass, and it's these little clumps, these tiny little clumps that are everywhere. That's what worm castings end up looking like. So it's not it's probably hard to see on the video, but you'll be able to notice the difference as you're doing this. Lots of worms in there still. I'm surprised that I wasn't able to find all those. Even more worms, lots of them. Yeah, I was able to collect a couple hundred worms out of that pile today. And as you can see, there's probably still putting another 50 of them in there just by shoveling it in there. Another fat worm. Yeah, looking up worm castings online, they cost about, you know, for pure worm castings, not for mix, but for pure worm castings, it seems like it's about $60 for a square foot. And this is probably close to a yard. I would say maybe a little less than a yard, which is 27 square foot. Might be less. I'd have to measure it. It might be actually more like a third of a yard. I'd have to measure it out, but I'm thinking it's pretty close to, it's somewhere in between a third, and so that's a big difference. But still, like, once this is done, it's anywhere from, I'd say, 10 square feet to 27 square feet. So that, you know, equates to 600 to, you know, up to maybe at most, probably somewhere around $600 worth of castings just in one barrel. I would say it's pretty close to that if it's 10 square feet, which I'm thinking this is 2 by 3 feet, so not quite, definitely not a yard. Mix this up one more time. A little bit more grass shavings. So now I mix this in, and I think I'd be pretty happy with that. As far as I like to put a lot of this on the top because it provides a lot of air and a lot of food for them. Alright, that's good. I love this. So the next thing is make a little hole here. And I'm going to dump the worms in. As you can see, there's a good amount of worms in there. And I'm just going to cover them up. And then I'm just going to water this. Put about, I'd say about 5 gallons of water in there just to kind of start it up, spread it out throughout the whole top of it. Put the cover on it. When I get a chance, I will get a couple hinges to put on here so that I can open it up, and then let's actually put it in a little bit, and then maybe get a lock so that I know that no predators can get in there. I'm mostly worried about raccoons. That's the only thing I could think of that could be a problem, and they would have to be pretty wise that the worms were in there and curious to dig around there. They might not really smell anything, so they might find that they're not really interested in it. But just in case. So that will be on there, and then I'll find a piece of cloth of some sort, maybe I've got a bunch of weed guard. Maybe put some weed guard in there, something that's going to lay over it and be little bit breathable. I might take my probably what I'll do actually is I'll just show you real quick, because it's probably good to put a little more airflow in it. So I'm just going to take this and make some lines in it. So that should be good for adding a little bit of airflow to it. Should be fine. So yeah, and that's it. Like I said, just water it down, and then I can leave it for a few weeks. Every few weeks I'll check on it, making sure they don't need more water. You're probably going to need to water them, depending on where you are, every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, really, maybe even longer. Putting a lot of grass, it's going to soak up a lot of grass. They could always go down and find water, even if you left it for a couple months. They should be fine in this size. If it was smaller, that might be another story, but 55-gallon drum, it's going to take a long time for the full thing to really completely dry out. So thank you for watching. Again, we're Five Loaves, Two Fish. You know, that has a lot to do with, you know, this is a Christian ministry, and the Five Loaves, Two Fish is you know, to take you know, something small like, you know, 5 loaves, 2 fish, and be able to, you know, with the help of Jesus and work and praying for Jesus to help, we can make you know, something out of very little. So that's kind of the idea. So thank you for watching, and like I said, check us out on Facebook, check us out on Instagram. We have a lot more to come.